Hello and welcome to Trino Community Broadcast episode 44. Today I'm very happy to have Piotr, Andrew, and Luis joining me for an awesome session about Metabase and Trino together. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. Pleasure to have you, and I know we're going to talk about lots of interesting things. How about we start with introducing yourself a little bit? You want to go first, Luis?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm here in representation of the entire Metabase team. I'm very humbled to be here. My name is Luis. I'm a success engineer here at Metabase. I've been working for 2 years in the company, and before this, I used Metabase really for long. I've been using Metabase for a long time. Basically, before doing data engineering and data operations, and now I am. I'm working as a success engineer, mostly helping customers adopt Metabase, solving problems, solving architectural problems, about how to deploy data stacks with Metabase on top.
That's awesome. Well, we'll get you some more new users today because the combination of Metabase and Trino is pretty amazing, to be honest, from what I've seen so far and what I know. And then we have Piotr and Andrew join us from the Trino/Starburst side. So tell us about yourself, Piotr. What are you doing with Metabase and Trino?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm product manager here at Starburst, and I'm responsible for all the integrations with Trino and Starburst, including Metabase and other BI tools like Tableau, Power BI, Python client, and everything that allows you to connect to Starburst or Trino.
And you're joining us today from Poland, so it is late for you, isn't it?
I just ate in the evening.
Awesome, cool. And then last but not least, our hacker and geek here, Andrew is going to tell us how he jumped into things that not everyone jumps in these days. How about you, Andrew? What are you doing at Starburst?
Yeah, my name is Andrew DeBazio. I've been working at Starburst for almost 2 years now. Worked on a couple different projects there, and yeah, one being Metabase driver, working with Piotr, helping to get the Starburst driver out so we could integrate with an awesome tool. So yeah, looking forward to chatting about it.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Lots to talk about Metabase. But before we dive into this topic, I want to jump about 2 other sections. So let's see what we want to talk about first. We do want to talk about our recap of Trino 2022. As you know, this is the first episode of our Trino Community Broadcast in January here, 2023. And lots of cool stuff has happened. We got this great blog post out, The Rabbit Reflects on Trino 2022, right? Obviously, this year is going to be the year of the Trino because in the Chinese zodiac, it is the rabbit year, and Commander Banban is the best and fastest of them all. So let's see what happens in 2023. In the recap blog post, we had lots of interesting things to tell about. Obviously, we celebrated 10 years of Trino last year in August and had a lot of cool videos and stats going, and just finding out all the things we've come through in the Trino project, starting at Facebook in 2012 and moving all the way to the Trino project now. It's been an amazing journey. Last year, we also had a cool events, Cinco de Trino in May, and then in November, the Trino Summit. And in between numerous episodes of Trino Community Broadcast. In fact, I want to show you a video from our recap of the Trino Summit in San Francisco. For those of you that didn't make it in person, maybe next year or like later this year, you will be able to make it.
Training models is my cause. I have traveled across the network, scanning bits and bytes. Each catalog, the Trino at brings power to the CLI. Better laws, better rhythm, Trino and BigQuery. Weapons and processing. Better laws, no big high Postgres. In a world with vendor locking. Better laws, better rhythm, Elasticsearch too. Iceberg will pull us through. Using SQL and query you. Cannot love. Better rate them all.
Did we make that just for this? Or was
No,
that-
we made this also for the blog post and in general as a
Oh.
teaser that said you have to come next time to the Trino Summit.
Oh, nice.
Props go out to Brian Olsen, our uber creative co-host that can't make it today. But yeah, super awesome video. And as you can see, it was a great event. Great community. Also for the people attending virtually, we have lots of blog posts out about each individual one. People came all the way from Singapore and Brazil to join us in San Francisco, but we had like many hundred people watching us online as well. And the videos from companies like Apple and Bloomberg and other presenters were very well received, and it was a great event. And we're gonna do it again in 2023, so that's gonna be great. But of course, we also released the Trino Definitive Guide last year in English, 2nd edition. We have more plans for that. In fact, I have good news for you, Piotr. The Polish edition is going to come in the next month or two. The Chinese edition is also going to follow later this year. And I'm trying to get a Korean and Japanese edition off the ground for our communities there. Because what we found out, for example, is analyzing what happened in 22 in terms of traffic, there must be a pretty sizable Trino community in Korea, in Seoul, because there's a lot of traffic to the Trino website. So, or they just really like Commander Banban. I don't know, but I'm guessing that there's. Well, in fact, I know that there's like SK Telecom and others in there over in Korea. So
yeah, I
really
can't wait. I can't wait for the Polish book. It's always funny
hopefully the
they
translation will be
translate
good,
Yes,
because
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
awesome.
It's always funny how they translate the engineering books to the Polish language.
Yeah, I'm sure it's super difficult. All right, so otherwise, of course, Trino also had lots of new releases coming out last year, close to 50, I think. And we got really cool new functionality like the SQL merge support, SQL functions, JSON functions, table functions now with the query pass-through. Our project Tardigrade launched with fault-tolerant execution. That's really suitable for more difficult workloads that have long-running queries in ETL or batch processes, or also just allow you to have a more stable performance. And then, of course, the new connectors lake in the object storage world for lake houses like Delta Lake, Hudi came on board. So it's been a massive year. And then we finished off the year with the release 404 that we skipped because 404, the number is not found in the HTTP request. So we jumped right to 405 and got a whole lot of features out there. And now it's taken us a little while to get 406 out, which we got out yesterday. You see here we got Apache Arrow support for reading from BigQuery, views in the Delta Lake connector. A lot of people will love the Iceberg REST catalog and the Iceberg JDBC catalog. So instead of using a Hive metastore with the Iceberg catalog, you can now just plump into a PostgreSQL database as the backend there, which makes deployment much easier. And numerous other performance improvements and so on happen as well. The BigQuery connector now can be used with fault-tolerant execution. And for those people still stuck on HDFS directly, they can also take advantage of the fault-tolerant execution to use the HDFS storage for spooling. So those two releases are all out, and we're already working towards the next. A lot of stuff was already merged again overnight. We also got another Python client out. That's good for our Python ecosystem, but that's enough for now. What we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the and that is Metabase. So, Luis, what is Metabase again?
Well, Metabase, I like to define it as like the easiest way in which you can get self-service analytics. Like literally, the simplest and easiest way to start your journey to self-service analytics. If you don't believe me, just go to your terminal and just do Docker run, as you see there in the presentation. IT, you expose a port, and you start Metabase. Like you don't need to have a huge server. You don't need to have like a cluster of servers just to start. It's one jar file or one container. You can start with just as minimal as 256 megs of RAM. I'm not kidding. And in just 30 seconds, a Metabase server will spin up, and you will start doing questions. You just start connecting your data sources. You start to do questions to it. Then you start to build dashboards. You put filters on those dashboards. And if you check out the video that we have on the website, on as much as 6 minutes, you have a dashboard connected to your data source with filters, with questions. You can start building subscriptions to those dashboards so you get, information in your email and Slack. It's extremely easy. We put a lot of effort into, building a product that is extremely easy for anyone that knows SQL, or even people that don't know anything or don't know what is SQL at all, right? Metabase has a really, really, really interesting query builder, which you can go directly and do just, questions built with, just clicking over, I want to see this group by that. I want to sum this field, and I want to see this by month or this by year. It's extremely easy. We truly, truly encourage anyone that wants to know what is going on with their data to just go ahead and try it. Just spin it up, maybe locally, or you can even go to our cloud. Go to our cloud, just click, and in 5 minutes you have a full-featured Metabase server ready for you to start your journey into self-service analytics.
Oh wow, that's really cool. So it is a web interface, I'm guessing, from seeing the screenshot here and like talking to you when you say about a SaaS application as well.
Definitely, yes. It's not about installing nothing. Just get onto with your browser. It's all web-based, and again, it's just as simple as having one single container or one single jar file running maybe on your machine or an external server, or you can have clusters of spinning Metabases, and we are going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. But you can scale it as much as you wish depending on the load that you have.
Wow. So do people actually use it just like locally as a local application, just fire it up and run them, or is that sort of like not so common? It's more common to have a multi-user deployment.
Well, we have all the spectrum entirely. Like we have people that run it on their machines, to connect it to maybe a SQLite database that they are doing some, tests, or they even want to maybe do some analytics on local databases that they have, till the very end, like massive Metabase deployments. We have customers that literally have more than 100 Metabase servers, one for each of their customers, or even clusters of a single cluster of Metabase with maybe 50, 60, or maybe more containers to serve thousands and thousands of internal users. So it's the entire spectrum. Yeah.
So it's quite like suitable for a really big scale as well. And then on the lower scale, Andrew, you just ran it locally yourself, I'm guessing, in the development phase, right?
No, yeah. To add on to what Luis was saying, and I'll go over that in detail, but basically building our driver and merging it with Metabase in their Uber jar, running it locally, as well as we have a pipeline internally at Starburst that we push our driver running in, like Luis said, it's EKS cluster with the Docker container behind a load balancer, and that was very easy to set up, very easy to update, sort of a no-brainer.
Okay, and like from what I understand, Metabase is open source, so it was very easy for you to like literally get the code and fire it up. Like when you're saying build that jar, you could write your own driver and like build it on the fly, fire it up, and debug on the fly and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Metabase has a whole document that actually describes building and contributing your own third-party Docker driver, and
wow.
yeah, so following those instructions, working with them, and most importantly, they have a very good test suite, which I heavily leaned on, which was very nice to see because some other tools that we work with don't actually have that sort of support at that level. So having 3,000 tests that you can lean on, and when something goes wrong, like all these tests explode, and then you go and you fix things, you can kind of be rather confident that you're doing the right thing.
Oh wow, that's good. That's definitely a significant number of tests. So that's really nice.
Yeah,
So
as you can see, Manfred, Metabase has a very similar, mindset to the Trino community and Starburst. This is basically a very, very similar model where you have an open source project where everyone can contribute it, like we did with the Starburst connector, and then an enterprise offering basically that allows the company to provide a free open source version to everyone who wants to test it and use it.
Yeah, that's right. So that's really interesting. So you're saying also then you have these options of cloud hosted and single, like self-hosted. Luis, as a company, there's also Metabase as a company, and I guess that like offers a cloud hosted version for others, or do people also like self cloud manage hosted or whatever you call it?
So we like to offer what's best for our customers. Of course, as we always recommend people to host Metabase or to run Metabase in our cloud, we have a very, very well prepared cloud for managing Metabase with completely zero downtime, everything replicated. We have a very extensive documentation about how do we host Metabase for our customers, and in fact, we have more than 2,000 customers that are using our cloud right now. But we have customers that prefer to use their own cloud or maybe host on their premises, and that's perfectly fine for us. We can even move so we have processes for moving people from self-hosted to our cloud, and we offer also the opposite. When people want to leave our cloud, we just tell them, sure, I mean, it's your data. You if you want to leave, here it is. Like if you use Metabase, that's fine for us. So we give them their data back, and they can host Metabase on their premises. So as you can see, like all those charts are in a very interesting document that we run. That we have on our webpage, which is metabase.com/security. But our current cloud deployment, has replication across availability zones. Everything is secure by default. The cloud services provider that we use has plenty of security measures, and we put more security measures on top. Like we encrypt rows by default with specific keys that are random and one key per customer. So we have plenty of security measures to protect our customers' data, which is the most precious asset they have.
That's amazing. And then, of course, as you said, when you said they can self-manage, that's obviously, there's lots of use cases where that might also be necessary, right? Like there's some super private data that's siloed elsewhere, but you still need to do analytics on it, right? So you could move it inside, but also like take the convenience of the cloud otherwise. So that's cool.
Yeah, we have use cases, for example, with several governments around the world like we have governments and we have even customers, with super high regulations that they even run Metabase completely air-gapped, and that's really cool. We even provide our customers that need air-gap solutions all the tooling needed to deploy Metabase on their premises without even touching Metabase for the Metabase infrastructure in case they need. We have that. We have people that run one Metabase instance per each of their customers. So like there's people that provide Metabase to their customers, and we help those customers to achieve, like massive, like let's say private clouds of Metabase on their own infrastructure, which is pretty rad, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, and that's good, right? Like you adapt to whatever the customer needs. When I look at that self-hosted diagram, I see two things that I have questions about, and that's Postgres or MySQL. Is that the backing database for Metabase, so to speak?
Exactly. So Metabase is basically I always like to say it's like the perfect example of a 3-tier web application, and we use to persist all the data, users, passwords, like the questions, the connection strings, everything. You have to deploy a database, which can be either Postgres or MySQL.
Cool. So in Andrew's case, when he was hacking, you had like Postgres or MySQL running locally in a container or something.
For the application database?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, Postgres is what we're using for our dev instance.
Cool. Awesome. And then on the top of that same diagram, there's HA proxy. So does that mean the application is kind of can be horizontally scaled and is mostly stateless, so you can just like route with any proxy to wherever?
Absolutely. You can use any reverse proxy that you like. And we have interesting use cases like people that even use that pattern and they develop endpoints, custom endpoints that do really interesting stuff to maybe augment some Metabase functionality, and they expose those endpoints behind that reverse proxy. So you keep the same Metabase UI and experience, but with custom developments and custom functionalities that are served by those specific endpoints. So you can see the application can be customized up to any extent that you wish.
That's cool. Awesome. Should we chat quickly about Metabase, the company? Like it's been around for a while, from what I understand.
Absolutely, yes. So Metabase came up as a company from Expa. All the our CEO Samir is the one that explains this the best on his podcast. So if you search for Metabase, in the podcast and news that you'll see around, you'll hear from him better than from me. How did Metabase started? But it was a company inside Expa, and all the startups in that company builder had the same requirements. So they all needed to know how they were doing, right? So Metabase started there, as a tool to be connected to those startup databases, and those startups needed, the same metrics. How much is my revenue? How many customers do I have? How am I doing, right? So it started like that, and after a couple of years, they open sourced the tool. When they open sourced the tool, it really exploded. It was very, very oriented towards, and this is some pattern that we have internally, which is we have engineering teams that find Metabase a really cool tool, and teams of engineering, they are the first one that start using the tool, and then the tool goes to the rest of the company. So it started as an open source project. We are still an open source project, and it will be kept that way forever. And yes, right now, after a couple of years, we raised a few rounds, and now we are a Series B company. I don't remember the exact data, but right now we are a Series B company. We are around 56 people all around the world, and the Metabase turned, I would say, into a remote company. Like by default, we don't care where you are, and the hours that you work. In 2019, 2020. I joined the company in 2020. like in the middle of the pandemic, and we didn't go back to the office, and we don't pretend to. So
that's awesome. So where are you then now at the moment?
right now I am in the middle of the Argentinian pampas, I would say. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's a very small city in the middle of the Argentinian pampas, called Venado Tuerto. It's 80,000 people.
Cool. So the company is truly like all across the globe to some degree.
Truly remote. People from the US, Europe, Asia, here Latin America. Yeah, truly remote.
Well, I imagine you experienced a lot of fun when Argentina won the World Cup in football just recently.
I'm sure it was amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
True.
I have a question for you. So if you have people from all over, do you find that that makes it easier to hire people who are like Clojure experts? Because I can imagine that you want people who are, interested, and I'm assuming that people who apply to work at Metabase already come in like loving Clojure, wanting to contribute, and like maybe they've already contributed to like Metabase.
So we, I mean, although we don't expect anyone to be an expert in Clojure, the backend is written in Clojure, right? We even hired people that they didn't even know anything about Clojure, like the moment they got into Metabase. And I mean, they were really good programmers in other languages, and they learned Clojure in 1 month, and that was it. Like they are really good. I have a couple of them in my mind right now, and but again, it isn't needed that either Clojure or React, right? We hire people based on their skills. It's the skills that they can show, in an interview, or a GitHub repo that shows what they can do, rather than what they say they can do in a resume.
So just stepping back for the not so JVM geeks out there in our audience, what's Clojure? And can you maybe describe this architecture diagram? Maybe that sheds a bit of light on all the jargon we just threw around.
Sure. So first of all, that architecture diagram that you see over there, it's extremely super, I would say 100,000 miles, up in the air. Because it won't reflect at all the complexities of the code base, right? I'm pretty sure that that's everyone knows that it's for granted. Everyone takes that for granted, but just want to put that into detail. So Clojure is a language, a programming language that is, I would say, it's Lisp-like, right? So it comes from the roots of Lisp. And if you haven't seen those type of languages, it's not. I would say it's not like something similar to Python, where you say, I want to initialize a variable and say this is, the sum of this plus that. But rather, in Clojure, you write things like the variable is this, and it's like the operation first, and then you pass the variables. Like it's really interesting, the notation of Clojure. It's once you get accustomed and you get used to read it, it's pretty easy and it's pretty expressive. I'm still learning Clojure. I didn't write code in Clojure. I mean, I won't write at all. I'm not I would say a programmer or a software engineer, but I am doing some Clojure stuff in my free time. It's really nice. I mean, once you get used to the language, it's super nice. The particularity of Clojure is that it basically compiles to Java bytecode. So anything that you write in Clojure can be put into a Java virtual machine, and it will run there. So it's really interesting what you can do in Clojure, basically, because it handles the Java virtual machine will give the maturity and the performance of something that is Java-like, but it's not Java, right? So it builds to Java bytecode, but it's not Java. So, one thing that I forgot about saying is the language is, has it's functional programming, right? So it has all the benefits of the functional programming. You don't end up, in those massive, objects over objects. So, it compiles to Java bytecode. So that brings Metabase to a really interesting point where that is why in the beginning of this chat I said you can start with 256 megabytes, and I'm not kidding. Like you spin up a Metabase server, 265 megabytes. Like if you have a very specific and super short, I would say, use case, that Metabase server will work and will work really, really efficiently. So that is why we have customers that run with, I would say, 2 gigabytes of RAM Metabase instance, like 600 users. 600.
Can you even get machines that are that slow and small?
I mean, and it's super efficient. Like 600 users, hitting the instance with nothing, like with just 2 gigabytes of RAM, which is pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. So that is the chart that you're seeing there is basically how the application works. So it's a React frontend and a Clojure backend. The Clojure backend exposes a REST API, and there are two, I would say, very important aspects. So on the front end, on the React application, everything is on your browser. You start to build a question. A question is like, I want to grab from my data, from this table, these fields that I want to maybe sum this by month. So you start to build that, and that is a structure. This is a JSON structure that we call MBQL, right? So, and that's a pseudo structure of what you want to get from your data. That is sent to the backend, right, through an API, and we have an API that transpiles whatever you want to the data source that you have underneath, right? And we do that because we support SQL and NoSQL databases. So that MBQL can be transpiled to Mongo, or can be transpiled to Postgres, or can be transpiled to Trino. So that is what we do. And after that, it's after the Metabase transpiles that, it sends that to the database that you connect to. Database runs the query, and we return that, and that is a JSON structure that is rendered on your browser. And also in that front end, there's a huge, massive, super well cared logic about what do you want to see, right? Because it's different. That it's really different if you want to see something through a time frame, or you want to see a table. You want to see like row by row. So Metabase has this very interesting concept about the metadata, and that is why Metabase is called Metabase and not like any other name. It has a really the UX and UI designers have taken very special care about what is the metadata of all that data. So if you have maybe a timestamp on the data that comes, you might want to see a line chart or a bar chart. If you don't have that, maybe you want to see a table, or you want to see any other chart, or maybe a map. You have latitude, longitude, you want to see a map, right? You want to see a pin map. So that is all in I would say the render logic that you have on the front end is pretty cool.
Cool. So ultimately, Andrew, you had to learn this MBQL to some degree because you had to translate that in the driver to the Trino SQL side of things, right?
Yeah, they have some utilities in there that can translate MBQL back and forth. So yeah, learning how to leverage their utilities and things like that to achieve that.
Cool. And then I also see on the top there's the Jetty web server. So that must mean that the interoperability between the Clojure code and the Java code is really good, because Jetty is obviously written in Java for the Eclipse Foundation.
Exactly. So in Clojure, you can import Java classes if needed. So that's pretty cool as well. But yeah, Jetty is it's a web server. It's an embedded web server. So that's really awesome from Metabase. In that single jar that we bundle together, you have a web server there. So you don't need to put anything else You just spin up. You just do, just start a jar file, and everything is there. Absolutely everything is there. You don't need any other thing. Specific web servers or the same as Trino. I know that you use Airlift and many other stuff inside the application. You don't need absolutely anything. Everything is there already.
Yeah. Yeah. Just side note, also like Trino also uses Jetty inside it via various layers. But yeah, that's awesome. So should we talk about how this all came together, where we're at now? Like sort of a little bit about the history of Metabase and Trino. Obviously, Metabase been around since 2014 with as a company. Starburst and Trino have been around for quite a while now as well. The Trino rename was what caused the first interoperation with more in detail with the Metabase community on my end, because when that happened, the rename from PrestoSQL to Trino, we wanted to make sure that clients are still supported. So I created a little PR that basically took the old Presto driver, but we killed that off because I didn't have enough time to really learn Clojure, and probably also not the brain power at this stage. And also that driver was based on the REST API, or the sort of REST API of Trino. And I think we then changed course, and then Piotr and Andrew, what happened next? At some stage, you started a conversation with Metabase. Tell us more how we got to where we're now, where we have a really good driver, I think.
Yeah, of course, we have state-of-the-art driver currently.
Awesome.
And of course, as always, it started with a customer, with a customer need. So Metabase got a lot of traction. I would say like 2 years ago, a year ago, within the Starburst customers, and they requested that they need better performance, better experience. Then, as you said, the Presto connector was API based. It was not so fast, and we had to figure out something to provide a better experience to the customers, especially in terms of the performance. And that's how it started. We reach out to the Metabase. As you can see, they are great people work there with the same mindset as us and Trino community. So we very quickly created a new connector for Starburst and Trino. Of course, it works with the open source as well. It's called Starburst. You can use it with Starburst Enterprise, Galaxy, and any version of Trino.
Awesome. And so how long have you been hacking on this now, Andrew?
I think
because you're the one-man show that runs this, essentially, aren't you? Or do you have others helping with code reviews, or is that Louis doing it? Or
no, we have a team. So I picked it up, and I basically drove it until basically to the state it is now. And then we have another developer who's working on helping pick some tasks up. So feature requests and things like that. But yeah, I think I've been working on it for maybe a year now. But I mean, working on other things as well. But I think the core bulk of my work was maybe ended in probably October. And then now just picking up tasks, helping, we have people contributing outside of Starburst now, which is super awesome.
So the driver is also open source, then, is essentially what you're saying.
Yeah, the driver is open source. We've had people open up issues and PRs and actually contribute changes that are some pretty large changes too, which has been awesome to see. So yeah,
that's awesome. We'll look at those a bit later, huh?
Yeah. High five to Laurent, who's now working on the next versions of the Metabase driver. Hopefully he will join us next time after we deliver some new features in the 2023.
Yep,
that's great. Cool. So should we have a look at this in action, or do you want to talk about some of the core advantages of Metabase with Trino, Luis? What do you think?
Sure. Let's take a look at some of the use cases, of interesting use cases that I think are relevant to the community. So I picked these 3 use cases specifically because I know that people that use Metabase, I interact every single day with customers, and I know that customers will check this out and will really open their eyes of what you can achieve, with this, match made in heaven of Trino Metabase. Because one thing that Metabase still cannot do is, join. So let's start with the first one, which is seems like there's a diagram there. So the first thing that Metabase cannot still do is connect to all the databases that are around. In fact, thanks to you guys, because you made the driver specific for Starburst, which is absolutely awesome. The architecture of the driver is modular, right? So anyone can write a driver, and we have drivers that we take care of, right? So for example, we take care of the Postgres driver, of the MySQL driver, right? But there are drivers that we don't support, like for example, Redis or Elasticsearch. I'm mentioning Elasticsearch because it's maybe the most requested driver like that we don't support out there, but Trino does, which is pretty awesome, right? So what can you do with Metabase and Trino, right? So what you can do is use Trino as a query feeder engine to connect to Elasticsearch, or maybe to connect to Redis. Everything that I am saying here, and which also that I'm going to show, is on a repository, on GitHub repository. You just have to go there, pull the repository, and do Docker compose up, and it will spin up Elasticsearch, Redis, Metabase, Trino, absolutely everything. It will connect everything automatically. Oh, one thing that I forgot to mention also is that, as you saw in the architecture, and we have basically a REST API backend. Absolutely everything that you can that you do via the front end can be done in the backend, like programmatically. So you can start, sending API calls to Metabase to set up the instance, add users, delete users, do queries, build dashboards, send alerts or subscriptions. Absolutely everything can be done programmatically, which is pretty awesome. We have customers that handle massive amounts of Metabase instances without using the mouse at all, which I think it's pretty awesome. And in the demo that I prepared, and which is on the GitHub repo, everything is done programmatically. I mean, all the connections and all the setup is done programmatically. So I create a user, an admin user, set up the instance, connect connect Trino, and I do all the programmatic. So that can be done. So again, you can connect Metabase to Trino, and from Trino access all those data sources that we still don't support natively. And you have of course all the advantages of Trino, right? So clusterization, the query optimization, and everything that Trino does really well. So
let me ask a question about this, because in your examples you pointed out like Elasticsearch, Google Spreadsheet, Cassandra, and Redis here. The history of Trino is, however, more out of the whole object storage and massive scale kind of Hive sort of ecosystem of lake houses and data lakes and stuff like that. From what I understand, you can also query those then, and Metabase itself doesn't have any drivers or anything for these systems, right?
Exactly. So I just picked this 4, or I just put these 4 icons because these are the ones that we have mapped on our issue tracker. So if you go to Metabase issue tracker in GitHub, you will see that people ask for Elasticsearch, Cassandra, Google Sheets, and Redis. But as you mentioned, a super really cool feature is that you are open to all the ecosystem of Trino, right? So you can connect to absolutely everything that Trino connects. And we are going to mention one of the use cases of one of our customers that they use Metabase and Trino to connect to a data lake, which is Delta tables, right, from Databricks. So yeah, I mean, you are open to all the connectors that Trino supports, which is awesome.
Yeah, so that's really I think an important use case for any of those like larger enterprises that end up with data lakes and lake houses. And I think that's a great combination. And obviously with the performance of Trino and the performance of Metabase and the scalability, you can like get that data accessible to everyone. That's quite amazing, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I
So
have a question. So is this sort of a new realization? Because I didn't know about this. Like, I mean, this makes a lot of sense, but I didn't know you were using Trino like this. So this seems like sort of like a new development, or
you mean from the Metabase side?
yeah.
So I mean, from we always support it. I mean, this architecture was always there, right? What you needed is, people to realize, oh, if I can put all these modules together, I will be able to use the power that Metabase has for build or offering and opening to a company, the self-service analytics culture and making it that very, very swiftly. And also the power of Trino to do everything that does really well, right? Clusterization, query optimization, getting into data sources that Metabase didn't support natively, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like you putting the best of both worlds together in order to reach a higher milestone. And I truly believe that the customer that we are going to mention in some minutes did that, right? So they knew they knew that they had in their company people that knew really, really well how to write SQL and how to use all the power from Trino and Delta Lake and absolutely. And then they have people that didn't know about SQL. It's not their role. They are not there to to get into a data lake and do a super optimized query. And that's why it's there. It's Metabase there, right? It's there just for people that don't know about SQL. They want to get something. They want to get some insights from the data, and it's there. It's at the reach of a couple of clicks. And the best of Metabase is that both teams can play together, because there's maybe one person from the data team that might write the most efficient and optimal query that uses the data lake up to all of the extent, and there's someone that don't know absolutely anything about what a data lake is and how does it work and stuff, and they both can play together in the same platform, which is pretty awesome.
So when you said these multiple engines or backends for the data that Trino can access, that also gets me to the second sort of advantage that you mentioned, that is the joining of these different engines and SQL and NoSQL engines. Can you tell us a bit more about what you mean by that?
Sure. So another thing that Metabase currently doesn't support is, you might have, 10 Postgres, right? Or let's say 5 Postgres and 5 MongoDBs. And in Metabase, when you connect to those 10 Postgres, let's imagine that you're not doing foreign data wrappers and all that kind of stuff. But if you connect to all those data sources, you cannot say, hey, Metabase, I want a table from this Postgres joined with this table from this other Postgres. Or if you want to cross technologies, I want this table from this Postgres joined with this collection from Mongo. You cannot do that yet in Metabase. And with Trino, you can. Right, because Trino was made for that. Like, it uses all those connectors, and you can go to Metabase and build a query. It says, give me this table from Postgres, join it with this collection of Mongo, as it would be, Mongo a relational database. I have a demo about that as well, which is pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. So again, it's one of the most requested features. One of the most requested features that we have right now. Yeah,
that makes me really excited for the demo. So I want to see that very soon. But first, last super advantage that I think is kind of unique and interesting, and that's the security level that you're also talking about.
Yeah. So this one is also truly amazing. And the first time that I made it work, my mind was blown. So Metabase has a very interesting feature in the Pro and Enterprise offerings, which is data sandboxing. Some people call that as well row-level security. And basically, it's the possibility of, let's say you connect Metabase to a data source, and in that data source, there's a column that gives you the ownership of that row, right? So you have, row 1 belongs to people from team A, row 2 belongs to people from team B, and row 3 belongs to people from team C. If in Metabase you maybe have users and you have that information of the users, I mean, which team does the user belongs to, let's say that you have that info either added manually, because you can add that manually, you can add that programmatically if you wish to, via the API, as we mentioned, or you can use a single sign-on and populate that information via a claim on the single sign-on. So you have that completely automated. Then you can enable row-level security. And what Metabase will do is, whenever it goes to that data source, Metabase will add on the fly, and without the user noticing, it's done entirely on the back end, will add a where clause that says, give me this data source, but just give me the ones that belong to me, right? It will add that where clause that says, give me, if you're in team A, just give me the rows of team A.
So you can restrict access to something like, social security numbers or date of birth or credit card numbers and that kind of stuff, right?
You can do column level security if you wish, and you can do row level security if you wish. Like, you can do both. It's truly, truly powerful. Like, lots and lots of customers are using this. Mainly that, like, you truly achieve with Metabase a multi-tenant self-service analytic platform, which is absolutely awesome. So as you can imagine, this was only, restricted. This is restricted, as you can imagine, to relational tables, right? So we had a where clause, right, and we passed that where clause. But with Trino, you can do this with NoSQL databases, right? Because Trino will expose those collections as a relational table. So with Trino and Metabase, you achieve the best of both worlds, right? If you have all your transactions in non-SQL databases like Mongo or maybe Elasticsearch, right? Or Redis or absolutely anything, you can achieve row-level security with those technologies. So it's absolutely awesome. Again, I have that demo as well.
All right. Well, with that, let's do this. Do you want to fire up your screen and show us?
Absolutely. Yep. Share screen. There we go.
Go.
Do you see my screen? Cool. Nice. So this is, a plain vanilla Metabase that it's configured for. It has all the features that we talked about, and it's connected. Let me go to my other Metabase. I mean, this other Metabase in this private window. It's configured with. I mean, I am the admin here, and this is this non-private window. I have like an unauthenticated user. The user is called Mongo Sandbox. That is why it says how's it going. But just want to show what did I do? I mean, how I connected via Trino all this database technologies. It's 4 connections in Metabase, and then I have Sandbox. I mean, I configured the row level security for that specific user, right? So if a user, let's go back here. If this user, which is called Mongo Sandboxed, brings a property with him, he can only see people from the state of California in a Mongo collection. I mean, in documents that are NoSQL. I just made this user, and I configured this user to be Sandbox. So everything that I'm doing here, it's all in our documentation. So if anyone wants to copy and do the same thing, they can go over to our documentation. The feature is called data sandboxing, and we have a really, really extensive and detailed guide about how to achieve what I'm showing here. So
and all that link and stuff will be in the show notes as well for anyone interested. So
good. So I'm going to move to the other window. So I'm going to show. I'm showing the third example, right? So sandboxing NoSQL databases. So I'm going to go with this user to the MongoDB, and so if you see, Metabase is showing to me just the table that I have access to, and which is Sandbox, which is the people table. So I click on this table and I just see, I'm diving into a Mongo collection, right? Something which is NoSQL. I just see the state of California, which is pretty awesome. This wasn't possible. This isn't possible if you just run Metabase connected just to Mongo. I mean, you need Trino to do all this, translation in between. And so if you see here, I'm doing what we call an X-ray. So Metabase built a dashboard with all the metadata that it has about this table, and it's showing to me just the people from California, because I'm the sandbox to those people. If I go back and I use a non-sandbox user, right, which is in this case is the admin user, and if I go to the same Mongo, I can see more collections. And if I go to the table, you'll see that there are more states here, right? So again, the user is getting into a table. Metabase is filtering the rows just for them, just the ones that the user has access to. And again, the user can come here, and start drilling, or maybe they can keep doing, slicing and dicing their data without any knowledge about SQL, right? Give the distribution of the source. Whoops, never always comes up. Yeah.
So this was just so you just literally like browsing the table, and then it automatically creates some of those summary dashboard things.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything was automatic for me, right?
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. Everything is, again, Metabase is throwing the questions, the SQL to Trino. Trino is going there and translating this to MongoDB, which is pretty awesome. The second demo is connecting Metabase to currently data sources that Metabase doesn't support natively. One of them, and again the most requested one, is Elasticsearch. So I connected Metabase to Trino and Trino to Elasticsearch. And for example, here I can click here, and Metabase is building an automatic dashboard for events that are right now in it's a Logstash collection in Elasticsearch, right? It's like built absolutely everything for me. I didn't need to do anything. It's completely transparent. Metabase doesn't know that this is an Elasticsearch, right? It's connected to Trino. And yeah, I mean, absolutely great. Right now, the users that want Elasticsearch as a source for Metabase run, to deploy a Trino in Galaxy or self-hosted. It's there. I mean, you can achieve this with Trino. So just go ahead. And the third demo is this join between different data sources, right? So in this case, for example, I'm going to join. I have a SQL question in Metabase. As you see, I can write SQL questions, or I can build questions with the GUI. This specific use case, which is joining between different connections, right? In Trino, there are different catalogs. One catalog is Postgres, and the other catalog is MongoDB. This specific case is only available right now in SQL questions, right? So you invoke the Postgres catalog, and then you join it again against the MongoDB catalog. At some point in the near future, we might have multi-catalog connections, so you will be able to connect Trino only once and expose all the catalogs, and you'll see the catalogs as schema.
Yeah, that's a very common thing, because it's not normal for a database to have a 3-level architecture. Every database has like this. There's the server, then there's the schema, and then the tables. Trino having that additional level of catalogs above is not common. But it's awesome that you can work around this by just firing the SQL statement right straight into it. That's good.
Exactly. And one really interesting thing about Metabase is, I mean, I did this in a SQL question, and then if I want to, I can. I mean, this question is already saved, right? So the user might not know that this is, I can click here. Whoops. Let's go back just a bit. I mean, I can go ahead and, for example, do a question based on another question in Metabase, right? So I just pick this question that it's a join between two schemas, and then I can keep my slicing and dicing, right? I want to do a count of by month, and well, I need to see what is because there's a column. I didn't take the created at column out from the query, so basically it's a query process.
Trying to filter on a column that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's ambiguous. I mean, you have the same column twice. But if I made this, I made this super quickly. But if I made this this question better, right? If you see what Metabase is trying to do here, it's doing a CTE, right? Give me this from this other, question that I built before. And the question that I built before, you see, it's like select asterisk. If I have built this question better and like give me specific columns, this question will come out super quickly, and you will be able to do again a select on another select that is joining two catalogs, which is absolutely awesome.
That's cool. So ultimately, when you write this, and you have like at some stage, hopefully soon, Andrew gets this going, the multi-catalog stuff, then you would basically be able to use the Trino SQL like syntax and everything to like use that on top of with the user interface, essentially.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And so you were playing with that in your development quite a bit as well, right, Andrew?
Yeah, like playing around with the running queries or running questions, executing queries, almost running the server locally and testing these things out is basically exactly what he was doing. But
yeah, no, that's really cool demo. Now, however, a demo is one thing, but let's go and switch over to something even more real world, and that is how this actually happens in the real world at a bigger customer. So, Piotr, do you want to tell us more about what's going on at Meesho and what they're doing?
Yeah, sure. So, as I said, the whole connector started from a customer need, and it was exactly Meesho. Meesho is one of our biggest customers in APAC. This is India's fastest growing internet e-commerce company, basically. And they have a huge Starburst enterprise environment, which is, of course, powered by Trino. And they needed a way to basically query their lakehouse, their Delta Lake, with high speed and visualize this data in a BI tool. And they were struggling a lot with the performance of other solutions, and finally they decided to use Starburst and the Metabase. Currently, they run more than 1 million queries a month, just from the Metabase to Starburst.
Wow.
Plus more queries outside of the Metabase. So this is really huge workload, and both Metabase and Trino, they're able to return data in a very fast way without any issues. Of course, in the beginning we struggled with the implementation, so it was like a few steps to get to the perfect connector that you can now use in the Metabase, but that's how it always works. And yeah, it's we of course we are planning some more features as well. So it's not that the connector is done and we will never touch it again. So we are talking with Metabase team about adding model caching to the connector. This is something that will benefit Meesho as well. It's like a caching layer for the queries that do not need to go directly to the database. Luis, you can correct me, but I think it's only supported by 2 or 3 data sources today.
Exactly. Yes, we support that. We support it right now in Postgres-alike databases. So Postgres, Redshift, and a couple more. Yeah.
Do you want to explain what this means? Like, what is the model? Is that like related to this Metabase query language, MPQL, somehow? And what's the part that's cached, and where is it cached?
Sure. So Metabase, like in Metabase you can do queries, right? As we showed and as I mentioned. But let's say that you wanna you don't want to expose to your users you know, a raw table, because you know, raw tables sometimes have or vocabulary or you know, like logic that only the people that work with that data knows, right? So in Metabase you can build a query that it's either GUI as I showed, or SQL, like you can write plain SQL that does a transformation or maybe or even clean this raw data, and you can save that in Metabase. Saving that in Metabase allows you, as I did, but didn't work out because of that. You know, I did it really quickly. You can save that query as a model. So the next time that your users go to Metabase, they can click, you know, I want to do a new question, but instead of going to the raw data, they go to that model.
And where is it saving that, Luis?
So if you save the model as it is, what it will do is it will run that query every single time that you know you click on the model. So up to that stage, it is like, let's say, I call it like it's a database view, right? It's gonna run the query over and over again till that point. Model caching is a feature that we introduced in version 44, which is the version that is one major version before the one that is current, which is 45. Model caching means that you have that model, which is defined in Metabase, but you can, if you enable model caching, Metabase will now go to your data warehouse and write back the results of that model. So it will run the SQL and we'll go with those results and we'll do a write back to the data warehouse. What that means is that you're not only, you know, like doing the cleaning or you accommodate names and you do, you know, aggregations and stuff, but now that is going to be persisted, and every single time someone clicks on that model, someone gets the data from that model, Metabase won't run the query, just that, you know, and going back to the source data, but it will now go to that cached model, persisted model that it's written on disk or RAM or however you are, you know, persisting that in your data warehouse, and we'll get the data from there. So it's faster, right? And it's you know, you can configure Metabase to refresh that model every, you know, minute, hour. You write a expression. So technically, as you can see, it's now a materialized view, which is handled by the application layer, which gives you
transparently, basically.
Yeah, it gives you superpowers. I mean, it gives the people that manage, you know, the analytics in the company. It gives you the superpowers of going and writing back stuff on the data warehouse. So it's really, really amazing, really amazing.
So I just wanted to add that this feature, of course, will be available for everyone, for Trino users and Starburst users. Besides that, we will as well introduce, this is something that we are doing now research on, because in Starburst we have like exclusive features that is called smart indexing and caching, which is a similar concept to the model caching, but it's using the SSD drives basically to cache the data for the end users, and we will try to integrate this as well with the Metabase model caching to make it even more faster for the Starburst customers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This is something that will be not available, of course, in the open source. But if you want to try it, like you will be able to do it in the Starburst Galaxy for free, of course, in our free clusters.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a good combination of aspects, because when Luis, I was wondering what sort of caching it is, and it seems like it's like where you like essentially answered it when you talked about it's a materialized view in a way. So it's basically the result set generically, not for a specific user, but a generic result set caching. The smart indexing and caching that Piotr is talking about is the object storage file caching. So it sort of sits in between, so it can be used and like accelerate event queries that are not necessarily the same, because it like caches the object. So it doesn't matter if you access one column or all three of them or whatever is in those object data files. So that's amazing. That's a really good combination. So very exciting.
Yes, we will have few levels of performance tuning as you can see in the Metabase very soon. So it's cool. Yeah, and besides this, we as well want to add some more authentication methods to the connector. Definitely OAuth. I'm not sure about the Kerberos. We'll only add it if there will be a big demand from the community.
Well, hopefully no one is using Kerberos anymore these days, but who knows, right?
Unfortunately, there are companies that are using it. If I remember correctly, the previous Presto connector supported Kerberos, Luis.
It supported Kerberos. Yeah.
That's because it was so old and way back then when it was written. They still used Kerberos. Nowadays, hopefully no one does anymore, unless they're still stuck on HDFS themselves as well. Sorry, I'm just throwing chives, but that's okay. Do you want to tell us some more about like Meesho otherwise? Like how many users are there like writing reports? How many reports are there? What's like, do you have anything specific what they do with this? Is this a backend thing, or does it show up somehow on the front end for the customers? Because from what I checked out the Meesho website a bit. It's basically like a multi-vendor e-commerce website where lots of people can, like individual entrepreneurs can like have their own shop, but kind of like a Shopify, Amazon, Walmart, whatever sort of mixture for India, which is really great. Do you know any more, or could you tell us any more about their usage and some of the successes they might have had? You already said like millions of like queries and stuff. That's already pretty impressive, but
yeah, unfortunately, I can't share too much with you about the how the customer is using it. But like what you can see on the screen basically is like their architecture more or less, how they are using Trino Starburst to query the Delta Lake. I can say that there are like thousands of users that are accessing the Metabase, and as I said, it's more than 10 million queries since we introduced a Starburst connector, since we started the collaboration with them. So this is really a huge workload, and their lake is obviously it's huge. It's the biggest e-commerce site in India, and this lake contains a lot of the events, basically event data all about what happens on the platform, on their whole platform, whole ecosystem. So this is a one of the biggest implementations of Starburst so far, and Trino.
Awesome. That's great. I won't roast you anymore, but I'm going to make it official now. If anyone from Meesho is watching, I'm officially inviting you to present about your use cases at the next Trino Summit. Just ping me on Slack and we can work about that. That'll be great. Or we'd also be happy to have you on a Trino Community Broadcast episode or anything else. I know we have software developers over in India from Starburst, even in the Trino ecosystem. So it's always great to have the global presence of Trino everywhere. So thank you so much for sharing the things you were sharing so far. And that's already super interesting, and I love it. That's great. Before I jump in and get Andrew to geek out with us about Clojure, I wanted to also put in a quick plug-in since I talked about Trino Summit. Don't forget that in a few weeks, like shortly on 8th and 9th of February, Starburst is running Datanova, massive event. Kara Swish is opening up, and like Martin, Dane, and David from the Trino ecosystem are going to be talking about fault-tolerant execution in Trino, and there's a whole bunch of other high-level people from the data ecosystem talking about entrepreneurial use cases, all the way down to really technical talks. and it's a free online event. I invite you all to just jump in, register for that, and check it out. You don't necessarily have to listen all day, but I'm sure there's going to be a nugget for anyone listening to the cast here. Check that out. We also have the events calendar on the Trino website now where that's visible. And we also just added a presentation from someone in South Korea who is going to present at a conference there about Trino. If you have any other events where you're going to present about Trino, let me know, and we'll add you to the calendar and let everyone know. We'll make you all famous. And now we're going to make Andrew famous with pull request of the episode. So Andrew, do you want to share your screen and tell us a bit more about the depths of Clojure in the driver that you encountered?
Yeah, sure. Share my screen.
And for those of you watching or just listening in, we are going to look at the GitHub repository that is the Metabase driver that's in the Starburst Data GitHub organization. And it's open source for anyone to listen. Not listen, you can't listen to a repo. To read and watch and learn and maybe even send some improvements, some of which we will have a look at.
Cool. Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Whoa.
The other one.
How's that?
Excellent. I can see your GitHub repo and everything looking good. I see
Cool.
you like the dark mode.
Yep. So yeah, I just want to go over a little bit just about just our repo. This is the Metabase driver, how folks can come in here and contribute if they want. So I try to set it up to be as easy as possible to get, sort of taking the Metabase spirit, because it really was quite easy to get things set up. I wanted the driver to be the same. I tried to make it so it's not live, so it's not like you can type code and it'll watch for your changes and push them. But with a quick command, you can build your driver. It'll going back to the architecture and how it works. And from the driver side of things, you ship a jar. So all the drivers are jars. You can download the jars here, which we have a couple of releases. So if I were to go to the main repo, you can see here we have 8+ releases. And you take the jar, you make sure you put it in this specific folder in Metabase, restart your Metabase instance, it'll pick up that driver, and then you will be able to access your driver, the Starburst driver, and connect to Trino, Starburst Enterprise, or Galaxy. And so I try to make development like that. So when you build your changes, it's actually sim linked into the version of Metabase that we test with. So right now, currently, we are working on getting version 1.45 out, but we have only released support for version 1.44. That's the latest version. So we used to be on 1.43. So basically what it is we'll check out that version of Metabase. We'll sim link the driver, all the actual files into Metabase, and then we can actually build the entire Metabase project. And what that does, doing it that way, like we could have just built the jar and then shipped the jar, but actually taking Metabase down allows us to actually execute the Metabase test suite, which I mentioned earlier. Is just a huge asset. I mean, working on this without that test suite would have been tough, because there's just there's a lot to implement. You never really know, as with any project, right? If there's no test, you'll never really can be sure that you didn't break something whenever you introduce changes. So building this so you could easily make sure you're running tests as you're doing development was sort of kind of my idea as I was as I was setting this all up. So if you ever want to get started, if you feel like, check out these prerequisites. It's pretty straightforward. You need Docker, you need Clojure, you need JQ, and then you actually have to go do the Metabase prereqs for doing Metabase development, there's just a couple of things to do there, but there's not too much. Mostly these are just downloading things.
What Java version are you running on when you're doing that?
That's a Metabase prereq, so JDK 11.
11, okay.
Yep. And yeah, so here's again, it's pretty straightforward. You're literally just downloading these things. They even have the new M1 updates, which I had to do recently, and everything worked pretty great. And then when you are good to go, quick start. If you just run make build tests, that's sort of baseline. Once you run that, it'll build the project. It'll launch the tests. And so what that actually does is builds your driver. Again, the code is symlinked. So basically builds Metabase and then creates your driver, builds that Uber jar, then launches the Metabase tests on our driver to make sure those tests are passing. And actually to launch those tests, it'll start up a Trino instance in Docker, Trino instance. That's why you need to have Docker installed. So that Trino instance will be running. It'll populate it with the mock tests. It'll actually, run Metabase test suite, like runs Metabase MBQL queries and things like that to make sure, those things are working. And basically at a high level, what the development is for this driver. I know if anyone's watching this is probably not the best Clojure explanation, but it really is kind of, you can kind of think about it like this. There's an interface that they define. And there's like hierarchies in this interface. They kind of extend each other. I'm kind of wording it in like a Java way, but there's like, the base driver interface, and then there's SQL, and then there's JDB CSQL. And that interface has methods that need to be defined. Some of those methods have default implementations as you go down that chain. Some of them don't. And you need to
show some of that stuff so we can have a bit of a clue on what, from what I remember from like ages ago, it's like lots of square brackets, isn't it?
Yeah, I can share. So for example, like query processor, these are methods that need to be implemented or overridden. So some of these things might have default implementations. If they don't, you need to if you don't, you need to implement them. If they do and they're not working, you can override them. Report time zones, private, for example, like, how do you represent, day of the month? This is HSQL, Honey SQL. So Honey SQL is on the Honey SQL. Yep, is another library they use, which is pretty neat. But yeah, here's these ones are pretty straightforward. These are just how to convert and represent time, zone time date, offset time, offset date time. But yeah, this is sort of the bulk of what the driver is making sure you've implemented this interface. And if there are issues or they release new features, you need to implement those new methods. So for example, we didn't actually do this. We had an open source contributor who wanted to use, we were talking about new features coming. In version 1.45, Metabase introduced some cool new features like date operations. So you could do like date subtract, date add, and date diff. So if you have your tables, you can actually diff dates and things like that in the UI. Currently not supported because we're in version 1.44, but we had a contributor merge update to 1.45. They made the changes to support all the new date operations. And so we're currently working on making sure that's fully tested, and then we want to get that shipped out. So that'll be pretty cool because we'll be up to date and we'll have all those new operations implemented. And I believe that, like Piotr was mentioning for model caching, I think the date time operations are also only supported in Metabase in sort of like those core drivers, which is like Postgres, I think it's like 3 of them or 4 of them. So we'll be one of the few other drivers that support that too. So that'll be pretty neat. And yeah, if I just show you how straightforward it is. So if you were to come in here, you just run make build server, and then you'll be up and running. I've already built it, so I'm just gonna run make server. This starts Metabase again. This is a checked out Metabase repo. We're always working on a set tagged version, so it's not always pulling the latest Metabase because that won't work.
That would be like working on Quicksand.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Or even like the latest release, because it's not necessarily going to work if you use the version that has, implemented the 1.44 interface. Version 1.45 has new, features that we haven't implemented. So probably not a good idea to take our driver and use a different version of Metabase. But yeah, you can see just like that. If you run make build server, it'll spin it up. I believe it'll spit it out somewhere. But anyway, you can see here that my jar file was put in the correct folder. Yeah, and I'm using H2. So we were talking earlier about using an application database but for development, you don't need to set up an application database. H2 will. Yeah, H2 works fine, and it's set up for you. You don't need to do a thing, and then you can come in here. I have SS, or well, not on this one, but in the dev one I do. And what's pretty neat is if you want to have some data to query, you can go and can follow, make tests. But actually, if you want to start Trino, you can just run make start Trino if missing. So it won't start a new one. Pretty, specific about my commands, but this will actually spin up a Trino instance for you in Docker. It'll expose it on port 8082. And then if you were to run make tests, as I mentioned, it'll actually populate those tables. And then you can actually connect your Metabase instance to that test Trino instance, which is what I usually do to mess around. So you can see here, my Trino Docker instance right here. I have airport data, which is pretty neat. And yeah, you're already good to go. A couple commands and you're up and running. So yeah, it's pretty easy to kind of mess around, play around with things, make some changes, test them out manually, or even just run the tests and get up and running. And
quick interaction here, by the way. Jaroslav is saying, let's go team. And yeah, he's one of the people that working with you on the team, and love it. Maybe we can get more people out in the community contributing and playing around with this awesome setup.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you can see here, as Luis mentioned, I'm not even doing anything. It'll already suggest kind of like a default dashboard for you. It'll just look at your data and say, oh, these might be like coordinates, latitude and longitude coordinates. So let me recommend this map here, which is pretty cool. And
that's very awesome.
Yeah, so I hope that I kind of took the spirit of how easy Metabase is, and I really wanted to use those tests and make sure I took those. So yeah, if folks feel like they are interested in Trino or Starburst or Metabase, or even just like learning Clojure, and you want to be involved, feel free. Like I said, we had some contributors make some, open up some PRs for some cool changes that we want to get shipped out. And yeah, it's awesome seeing that. I mean, I wasn't expecting to see it so soon, but when you see stuff like that happen, it's a pretty cool experience. So yeah, I think that's more or less what I wanted to share. So
that's awesome, Andrew. Thank you so much for that demo. And where can people find you then if you're saying they should like chase you down for some contribution and learning Clojure?
Oh, I just mean it's open source. Like our repo is, feel free. There's issues. I have some issues that are labeled good beginner.
Yeah,
PRs.
I have the link here. But if
Yeah.
people have questions, can they file issues there as well? Or can they talk to us on Slack? I mean, I'm obviously on the Trino Slack. Are you?
I'm on the Trino Slack as well, and I'm
Awesome.
definitely available. Yeah, and issues standard GitHub, protocol there. And yeah, definitely.
Awesome. That is so good. Thank you so much again to Piotr, Andrew, and Luis for joining me. This was very, very exciting. And I think, as I said then in the conclusion here, Metabase and Trino really are an amazing combination of tools. We also got some really cool feedback from Sean McCarthy. So I want to show this here for a second. He said, select star from Trino where front end is Metabase and speed like fast, lots of rows and lots of pretty pictures returned. I think that's pretty funny. Thanks for that, Sean. And I think that's a good summary. Anything else you want to add? Otherwise, Piotr, Andrew, or Luis?
No, it was a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you very much. And,
yeah, thanks.
See you on the next broadcast, hopefully.
Awesome.
Yeah, the same.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for inviting us. Really a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, and with that, thank you so much. We will post the video shortly, and we'll see you all next month, third Thursday of the month as usual. This one was 1 week late, but it was definitely worth waiting for. Love it. Thank you so much, and see you next time.
Music for the show is from the Mega Man 6 gameplay album by Krzysztof Słowikowski. Don't forget to give us a star on the Trino repository at github.com/TrinoDB/Trino. And for more information on future shows and to find show notes, check out trino.io/broadcast.